Sonnet 19 by John Milton. When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve therewith my Maker, and present my true account, lest he returning chide, doth God exact day labor, light denied? I fondly ask. But patience, to prevent that murmur, soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke? They serve him best. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding speed, and post o'er land and ocean without rest. They also serve, who only stand and wait. This is a very personal poem by the English poet John Milton. Milton lived in the 17th century and is best known as the author of the epic poem about the creation and fall, Paradise Lost. I first encountered this poem as an undergraduate, and it had a profound effect on me. Though its message is not complex, it is helpful to understand something of the context the poem was written in, how it relates to Milton's life, and something of the nature of the sonnet form that he uses for the poem. First, the biographical context. The poem seems to be a direct response to a medical issue that Milton encountered in his early 40s. He lost his eyesight. Now, I don't know what the underlying cause was, and I've often wondered if maybe he had cataracts, something that, if he had lived in a later time, could have been cured. Regardless, as far as Milton is concerned, he is facing life now as a blind person. This explains some of the vocabulary in the first stanza of the poem. Milton describes his blindness in poetic terms as his light being spent or used up. He says in the second line that blindness has struck him before he has lived half his life, with the implication that it was not common, even in the 17th century, for someone to lose their sight at this age. The word talent, which the poet capitalizes in line 3, has a double meaning. First, it's likely a reference to Milton's gift for poetry, and it recalls Jesus' parable of the talents, in which the one who hid his talent instead of using it was condemned for his actions. In the following line, Milton worries that his blindness may keep him from practicing his God-given vocation of poetry. God is likely to be displeased, Milton thinks. He is led to ask a question that he himself calls foolish, the word fondly. Does God exact day labor, light denied? I fondly ask. Isn't it unjust for God to give me the duty of being a Christian poet and then take my eyesight away? Milton says. Notice there is a break in the content of the poem at line 8, and this was common in the Italian sonnet form that Milton was using. Often the first 8 lines of the poem would pose a problem or ask a question. The last 6 lines would answer it. In this case, Milton has patience, again, which he capitalizes, patience as a person. And even though patience doesn't answer the poet's question directly, it does talk about the glory and sovereignty of God and how God has thousands to do his bidding. Perhaps the most direct answer to the poet is in the lines, God does not need either man's work or his own gifts. Perhaps we could paraphrase this as patience telling the poet to get over himself. You know, God is pretty great. He doesn't really depend on you to preach his word for him. But of course, from Milton's perspective, he may be thinking, hey, I'm a pretty great poet, and what are people going to do without my poems that give glory to God? Perhaps this is the reason why Patience says in the last line, they also serve who only stand and wait. I mentioned earlier that this poem had a big impact on me when I first read it. Why was that? First, I think because I felt a lot of empathy for the speaker in this poem. I mean, really, wouldn't it be tragic to lose your eyesight when your profession depends on reading and writing? Of course, we might think of other examples. Someone who has dreamed of being a pilot their whole life and is denied that opportunity because of poor eyesight. What about an aspiring gymnast who is talented enough to compete in the Olympics but can't because of a severe back problem? Perhaps you can think of other examples. The other reason the poem had an impact on me is I remember the professor bringing up the fact that some college students wonder if the time and money they spend in getting an education is even warranted. Couldn't they better serve God as a missionary or by starting their business early? And in my years of teaching, I've occasionally had students raise this very objection to a college education. But Milton's poem provides an answer. Preparing to be effective at what you hope to do in the world is a way of serving God. Or as Milton has patients say, they also serve who only stand and wait. As far as I know, Milton never recovered his eyesight, but he did not let his blindness prevent him from writing poetry. As the story goes, he recited the lines of Paradise Lost to his family members, including his daughters, who transcribed his epic poem. I admire this poem because the poet allows us to see and feel what he feels as a traumatic time in his life. And he also provides a universal lesson in humility when we begin to think too highly of our own gifts and talents. Let's read the poem again together. When I consider how my light is spent ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide lodge with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve therewith my Maker and present my true account, lest he returning chide, doth God exact day labor, light denied? I fondly ask. But patience, to prevent that murmur, soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding speed, and post o'er land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait.